If you're bad at making really good melodies and chords, here's a few simple ways that you can really evolve and transform a boring chord progression into something way more interesting. So this is the typical minor triad. It's the 1, 3, and 5. You want to add something extra to it. So this is the 5th note of the scale. If you go up 1, 2 more notes, you have the 7th, which is called a minor 7th. Or you can bring it up to the 9th. I like that sound, and you can also try the 7th. Both pretty good. Next, you want to make sure that you understand, even if you duplicate the entire chord, I'm sure a lot of you know this, but having it down an octave will sound pretty much exactly the same except more muddy. And usually the muddy frequencies are those lower frequencies that tend to take away from the brightness of the original sample, or it could be caused from an input problem itself. But you can lower it and it'll sound just the same, just more full, as in taking up more frequencies. So if you hear a specific note within a chord and you want to duplicate it and put it down an octave, that's totally acceptable, especially if you have, let's say, a descending chord progression and at the first chord it sounds way too bright and you want to bring some lower frequencies into that. All you have to do is just find a note and then put it down an octave and see which one in the chord sounds the best. So we pretty much transformed this chord into this melody / chord progression. So at the start you see it's the same, 1st, 3rd, and 5th plus the 9th. And then I took the top note of the chord and I put it down an octave because, like I was saying before, it just sounded way too bright. And I put voicing notes on the C. You could barely hear it. Now the chord sounds a lot more full compared to what I played before. I took that same exact note and instead of a minor 9th, I made it a minor 7th. And I changed the note that I pitched down. Instead of G sharp, it's E. This is a major chord right here. Instead of 2 notes, there's 3 notes in between the bottom and the second. And from here, I kind of just looked for notes that matched this chord from the previous chord, so it still sounded like it was cohesive. And again, I pitched down that top note and that same voicing. And I really just tried to mess around and see what would sound good. And this is another major note. I just don't have the E note here. And I stole this F sharp from the previous chord. And then again, I pitched it down. So as you can see, these chords, they don't look like they're all over the place, but it still has a descending sound. When you use half steps, it gives it more tension. So I resolved it with the last chord. So yeah, pretty basic chord progression. We'll listen to it. And then next, literally all I did was just broke up this D note at the top into 3 different notes. And then added a quiet rising up kind of like strum, and then I split the G sharp in half, and all this does is just add rhythm. So basically what you want to do is look for spots that you're able to cut and then add another note or like duplicate it, or spots in between the chord that sound good. That's pretty much it, just adding rhythm. Yeah, nothing too crazy right here. So I took the original chord progression and I broke up the notes within, but you can also add even more rhythm by adding what's called a top line. And these are just a few notes that are actually using some of the notes from the chord. Again, so we're just copying notes and putting them up or down an octave, just maybe not used at the same exact time. And this would somewhat be considered a counter melody. So now I'm going to play the melody that's just chopped up with the chords, and then the melody that's chopped up with the chords and the top line. Yeah, obviously it sounds a lot more realistic and somewhat more enjoyable too. This probably isn't like the best chopping and variation inducing method that I've ever done, but you could see that it definitely puts the point out there that it's important to kind of change up your chords because they get very boring and there's only so many ways you could play a collection of notes, but there's an infinite amount of ways that you can time those notes. So yeah, go crazy, get unique, follow for more.